Good morning, Breakfast with Bacon fans. I am Dr. Christine Bacon, and I just wanted to bring you what I think is going to be a very heartwarming story. Everyone knows where my heart is. They know I'm a very pro-life person, and you can't get any more pro-life than today's story. So I have with me, as you see here, a father-son duo. One of them lost his hair, gave it to the other, but in all seriousness, I have with me Kevin Karella and his son Josh Karella. Their story is very interesting in this pro-life world right now, or where we're fighting between pro-life, pro-abortion, and Kevin was on my show recently, and we talked a little bit about life then when we talked about his other son, who has gone to be with the Lord. And on that show, I found out a little bit more about this particular son. So, gentlemen, welcome to Breakfast with Bacon.
It's good to be here, Christine.
Thank you. Kevin, I want to start with you. When we talked, you told me about when you were a young man and you were in love and you and a young girl got pregnant. Can you take us back to those days?
Yeah, she was a college girl. I was just in high school. I had no choice in the matter, and
Of course not.
all kidding aside, all kidding aside, out of the blue, things happened, and found out she was pregnant. Well, actually, we didn't find out she was pregnant. We found out she might be pregnant, and then so the next couple of weeks were just a blur. And finally, one of my older brothers, I've got 9 brothers and sisters. One of my older brothers is looking at me. He said, "What the heck is the matter with you?" And he was the first person I told. And he said, "Well, you got to find out. You can't make a decision about anything until you find out."
Right.
And so he told me what we needed to do to go find out. And we go to this clinic, and they said, "Well, if she's pregnant, it's free. If she's not pregnant, it'll cost you $20 for the test, the pregnancy test." And I'm thinking, man, this will be the best $20 I've ever spent.
Right.
And so she's swishing it around in the little petri dish looking thing. And I'm waiting for something to happen, and nothing's happening. And I'm getting all excited because nothing's happened. And then all of a sudden she goes, "Well," she looked at her watch and she said, "Well, it looks like this one's free." And I'm like, "Wait, what?" Because nothing happened in the petri dish. And essentially she said, "Well, the fact that nothing happened in the petri dish means that she's pregnant." And so that started us out on this journey of how we were going to deal with this. And our first thing we had to do is tell our parents. And we told mine first, and it went better than I could have ever imagined ever. And essentially they said, "Hey, we're here for you." Then we told her parents, and they were so upset, but they were upset that we told anyone before she could get an abortion, not because she was
Oh,
pregnant. And that laid the groundwork for the next 3 months of them trying to get her to abort the baby, and me scared out of my mind, but knowing that what we did was not in any way it wasn't his fault. We didn't know it was a boy yet. It wasn't that baby's fault. And I was working on my appointment to the Air Force Academy, and keeping the baby meant that I would lose that appointment, but I couldn't see any other way. And so long and the short of it, we got through the first 3 months. After 3 months, at the time, you couldn't get an abortion in Alaska after 3 months. And so we're past that phase, and then we're talking about, okay, so now she can't get an abortion. So what are we going to do now? And then her parents found out that if they sent her to Seattle, that she could get an abortion for up to 6 months. This is back in 1982. So long and the short of it is we got her to not get on that airplane.
who's
And
we?
well,
Actually, just him.
Just you. You're a 17-year-old boy fighting for the life of your child all by yourself.
so and
So
then
what he did,
it's a lot more complicated,
Well,
and we might find our way into it. But essentially, the agreement was that she would have him, and then she could go on with her life.
Before I ask you any questions, Josh, what were you just going to say?
I was just going to say, my grandparents had paid for my mom. They gave her a ticket. They bought her a ticket to go to Seattle. And the day that she was supposed to leave, she wasn't supposed to tell anybody. It was supposed to be done in secret. Luckily, she did let us slip. She did tell somebody who told Dad. And
So
Dad
she wasn't telling you, Kevin, that she had this ticket?
No.
She didn't want to tell him. And she was very conflicted. I'll give her the benefit of the doubt. From everyone I've talked to, she was very conflicted. I was there. I don't remember it. But yeah, so Dad went over to her house, and this is in Alaska, when you've got fairly narrow driveways and whatnot. So he went and blocked her vehicle so she couldn't leave. And he was like, "I'm so sorry, but I love you, and I don't want this to happen." And because he did that, she missed her flight. And I'm here today.
Wow. Well, let me ask you, I mean, we're looking at the second trimester, which I can't even imagine the torture and the pain that Josh would have gone through. But your mom, or Kevin, I should say, your girlfriend at the time, was so conflicted. What do you think? Do you think that's what took the 3 months? Was she fighting with her parents? Did she want to do it? Did they want to do it? What are your thoughts based on what you know? Because most people be like, screw you. I'm going to go do this. Let me go do this.
I can't answer for her. She definitely was conflicted. A lot of crying, a lot of tears. She would call me from her dorm room telling me that her sister and brother and her mom just left after working on her, trying to get her to go get it taken care of. They're saying, "Kevin will never know. You can just say you miscarried or whatever." And then she called me crying, and back and forth. And then her parents disowned her. When she got done with that semester in school, she didn't have any place to go.
And she was how much pregnant at this point?
She was past her 6th month.
Yeah.
She didn't have any place to go. And so actually my brother, my older brother, the one that told me how to find out whether he and his wife gave her a room at their house, and gave her a place to stay, and a place of security, of confidence, I bought her a car of her own, and I started working 2 jobs.
You're 17 and you bought her a car?
I was working 2 jobs. I cooked from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. at a restaurant just like Denny's, real similar to Denny's. And then at 6 a.m. I got off work. I went to school, took a shower, attended classes, and then I did about 4 hours in the afternoon as a finish carpenter, helping somebody finish up their house. And then I go back to work. And
when did you sleep?
Well, that was when you're young, you don't need a lot of sleep.
But you do need a couple hours, right?
So I would catch sleep, or I would sleep in my car as it was driving down the road.
Okay.
A few things that God kept me alive, for what reasons, I'm not sure.
When you go to heaven, you owe your guardian angel big time.
I think I've retired 2 or 3 of them, actually.
Yeah, or Josh, we owe his guardian angel a thank you, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So you got past the 6th month. I take it the car situation when you blocked her in was before that.
Yeah.
You knew, was there ever a moment where she said, "Fine, I'm going to keep this baby"? How did that transpire? Because I know a little bit of the backstory that you shared with me. Who ended up raising Josh?
She actually stuck around. It's really a complicated, convoluted. She wound up meeting a guy about after Josh was probably a year old, and she had him. And actually, it's really ugly.
Well, we don't have. I mean,
they
for
tried
the sake
to. Well,
of saving face
essentially,
for
they
her.
tried to get me to relinquish my parental rights so they could put him up for adoption without me knowing and get rid of him.
Wow.
and these were things that I found out later on, talking to relatives that helped me understand the situation a little bit more. But yeah, the long and short of it is, she raised me until
18 months.
yeah, yep, and then when she couldn't give me up for adoption, because you have to legally, you have to have both biological parents have to
Sign
accept.
off. Yeah.
Yep. Then she told Dad to come get me, and I did.
That was the coolest day ever. I was climbing into an airplane, getting ready to fly out, and my beeper went off. It was just before Christmas, and so I shut down the airplane. It was actually already running when my beeper went off, and it just had the phone number on it. And I got out of the airplane. I was a pilot back then as well. And anyway, I got out of the airplane and I went inside the FBO and called it. And she said, come get him. And I thought it was just going to be for a few days or whatever. And when I showed up with my pickup, she was gone. Her boyfriend was there, and all of Josh's stuff, his bed, his photo albums, everything, lock, stock, and barrel was there. And I loaded him up in the truck and took him home. And he was excited about riding in Daddy's truck. He used to say truck, pronounce it a little bit differently, but essentially.
Nothing for adult TV or yeah. Family viewing not allowed.
It was a most exciting, most cool day ever. And he's been mine ever since. I mean, he's been completely mine.
Right. So you weren't dating her at this point for this year and a half because she was with somebody else. Were you getting to see Josh much in that 18 months?
Yes. So we had gone to engage. So now the baby's coming. We went to engaged encounter through the Catholic Church. And through the encounter, and there was like 10 couples there. And they gave out these books, each like a notebook, spiral notebook, and each half of the couple, they would give you questions. And it says, okay, now you go into separate rooms, you write what your answer is, and you write what you think their answer was going to be. And so we did that. When we came back together, it was like 10 questions that we filled. When we came back together, essentially hers, I mean, I'm reading her book and I'm like, who are you? I got somebody else's book. This mixed up. I don't even know this person. And everything that I believed and stood for
was the opposite.
She is opposite, but she knew how I felt. So she was always just telling me what she knew I wanted to hear.
Yeah.
And there's a priest and a whole bunch of lay people there, and they're all crying, and they're like, never have we ever seen a couple that has less business getting married than the two of you.
And she was largely pregnant at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that kind of closed that door. And if we weren't going to get married, it was. Yeah. Well, and I was shocked. Actually, I was hurt. I was shocked. I was blown away that she could have been telling me all these things that she thought I wanted to hear, and none of them were true. And then I started, actually, one of the lay people, a couple, took me aside because I wasn't ready to accept their analysis. And he took me aside and he said, you have no idea. So he says, you get married, and then all of a sudden she's going to come out with the real person. Anyway, and he painted a picture that was pretty frightening. But
probably accurate.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing there's a breakup in there. There's a breakup in there somewhere. You got to be a part of Josh's life in those 18 months. And so, Josh, we have our first memory when we can speak. So I'm sure you don't remember any of this, correct?
I think I do. I think I have the memory of being, I remember that Steve packed up he put all my stuff in a box, and the only thing I remember is toys. I'm sure there's more than that, but the toys was important to me.
Right.
And then and then put it out by the door. And I remember that, when he apologized to Dad for something that I mean, in the memory, I don't know what they were talking about, but it was there was an urgency or an emphasis that kind of burned it into my mind.
Yeah.
And
Well, the brain retains emotion. So if we can't articulate the emotion yet, that's why we don't usually remember, because we couldn't name it at the time. But the brain absolutely does recall emotional memories. And so that would really speak to the fact that this was traumatic in some way for you, enough to speak, to remember it. So Josh, take me then to your childhood. Take me to, what did it feel like? When did you realize, it was you and Dad, or did you have, when did stepmom enter the picture? Kind of take us to your childhood, and because I'm going to follow this on with when did you find out?
So this is something Dad never kept the information from me. He never said it. In fact, there were times where Kathy is my biological mom, and there are times that Kathy would write letters or notes, things to me, and Dad would say, "Hey, here's a letter, from your mom in Alaska." There was something, though, a disconnect for me mentally. Dad had remarried, and that woman, his wife, I considered her my mom, and I never considered her anything but my birth mother. And though she and I didn't get along terribly well, I always knew her as my biological mother. And it really wasn't until we moved. We're living in Europe. I grew up over in Europe mostly, and then when we moved back to the United States,
the military.
Yep. And when we're moving back to the United States, and Dad said, "Hey," we hadn't talked about it in a couple of years, but he said, "Hey, when we go back there, do you want to go see your birth mother?" And then something kind of clicked. I mean, I guess I reached a certain mental maturity, and I started realizing, oh, so Anne isn't my real mom, which, kind of explains a few things.
And how old are you at this time? 5, 6,
I'm sorry?
8? How old are you at this time? Ish?
Yeah,
10 or 12.
Yeah.
When we moved back from Europe.
Yeah, embarrassingly old to have this as a realization.
No, it really isn't. This is a tough conversation, so.
And so that was when I kind of realized, and that's when and then when I turned 16, between 16 and 17, I really started trying to investigate what really happened there. And when I turned 18, I talked to Dad. I had a very frank conversation with him, and he told me a lot about and then said, there's things that he didn't even know. So I started contacting her relatives that were close at the time, and kind of piecing everything together. But
I've got a quick interjection. When Josh turned 17, he walked up to me and he goes, "Hey, Dad, I just figured something out." I said, "What's that?" He goes, "I'm the same age as you are when you had me." And I grabbed him by the shirt collar.
Guess what you're getting for Christmas?
I said, "Don't follow in my footsteps." And thankfully, he took my advice, found a really wonderful girl, married her, and anyway, that was just a little.
I used to tell my kids the same thing. I was 18 and pregnant when I got married, and I said I was pregnant, and then I had a baby, and then I got married, the justice of the peace, and then I had a wedding, and then I got my college degree. And I said, do everything I did backwards. Get that degree, get that
Good
engagement,
advice.
Wedding, then have the baby. Yeah.
Anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt, but
Oh,
that
no,
was
it's
such
okay.
a.
You guys obviously have a great relationship because the humor, abounds as well. So, Josh, please continue. So you're about 17 years old, 18. Oh, you were 18 years old, and you said now you could go out and do what?
Well, I just went out and, I joined the military when I was 17. And I wanted to find out, what happened. And that's when we found out that neither he or I knew about the adoption where like I said, she was trying to, we knew that she had tried to get him to sign his parental rights away about a month and a half before she told him to come get me. And then we found out why. And it was unfortunate. We don't have any communication today. I've reached out. I still make it a dedication to try to call her on Mother's Day. I don't hide my phone number or anything, so I'm not trying to trick her into answering. She must know it's me that's calling it, and she does not. She has not picked up in about 12 years. However, she did come out to my wedding, and I've got two sisters. She had two more children, and my two sisters and my mom came out to my wedding, and then I really haven't seen her since then. We had a good time. I was hoping that would be the beginning of a relationship. However, I have been able to successfully live my life without her involved. And I am exceedingly grateful. First to my dad, but then to her. The way the laws are written, there is absolutely nothing that would have stopped her if she was dead set against it. I'm sorry, if she was dead set.
If she wanted to abort you, she could have absolutely gone and done it.
That's correct. And if
so it took a lot for her to stand up to her own parents, even in her own weak-ish way. You're saying you saw that strength.
I think no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that my dad showed the strength, and there were two strong opposing opinions. It was my dad's opinion, which was, again, he was strong and dedicated to that. And then her parents' opinion, they were also strong and dedicated about having me aborted. And ultimately, she sided with my dad. And for that, I'm very grateful.
Yeah. You know, I'd never like to badmouth someone, especially someone who's not here. And so, you know, all that keeps coming to mind when you gentlemen are speaking is brokenness. You know, her parents, their brokenness, that they don't, you know, the shame that comes with an unwanted grandchild or whatever it is. I don't presume to know their reasons, but brokenness. And you cannot be a mother and give your child away or try to give the child away, even away from its own father, without having some kind of inner turmoil. So, you know, I commend both of you, because I would think it would seem that she'd be a part of your prayers, that she could be healed from whatever it is that, you know, just has caused what you've said, where she just doesn't have the heart. But yes, commending her for making it out to your wedding. That's a really bold step for someone who kind of doesn't take calls, I think. You know,
I always commended her for the simple fact that I think that takes a huge amount of fortitude to do what she did, to give him to me completely and fully and forever. And I was the benefactor, even though sometimes when he was growing up, I wanted to wring his neck. I was the benefactor, and I never wanted to lose that. I got the best end of the deal.
Yeah.
And I never asked for child support when he was little or anything like it, because I didn't want to risk ever losing him. And it has been such a wonderful
life
experience. And not only that, and now I'm going to toot his horn quite a bit. It's not only what he's done in my life, it's what he has done as a young adult and an adult, not only in the military, but for so many people around him, the impact he has had on so many people, and the lives that are saved, that have been saved because he's here. The impact he's had on this world is immeasurable.
And that doesn't even count you have 3 children, right, Josh?
I do. Yeah. and we have, because I don't want to feel left out. I say something like that. We also have some children that we have taken in. They were teenagers, so they're grown and moved on now. But really, when I'm counting my kids, there's two other.
So 5 children.
It's 5, yeah.
Why do you think you took those other kids in? It sounds a little bit like your dad there. You just do what you have to do for someone in need.
I was an exceedingly difficult child. How
so? What'd you do?
Yeah.
Did you like hang your brother up from a telephone pole or what?
Actually, it wasn't a telephone pole. But they were yeah. My brother and I, like I said, I was an exceedingly difficult child, and Dad had to deal with us in a way, because I mean, short of beating us, he had to. I mean, his method of control, he wound up having us do our physical discipline became push-ups and sit-ups and things like that. He took a page right out of the military.
A retired warrant officer. That's how to raise his boys.
And so that was how he would discipline us. And at the time, I mean, I could handle a spanking because it was over, and then you go back to doing whatever. And there were times like, I'd think about something bad that I wanted to do, and I'd be like, is it worth it? Okay, yeah. And so he just kept having to turn the heat up, And so then he, like I said, he switched over to this different style, and then I'm doing, 50, 60, 100 push-ups, depending on the severity of the crime.
500
nice biceps, by the way.
Oh.
Is that from your dad?
I'm old now. I don't do push-ups anymore. But yeah. Anyway,
but his kids do.
And that turned out to be such a great way to handle children that are
energetic,
unruly.
Unruly. That's a good word. They're not bad kids, but they're troubled kids. So I saw in some of these children, some of these young teens, that they were in households where their parents were having a very difficult time dealing with how difficult they could be. And so we invited them. We said, okay, you can live with us, but here are the rules. And it was really amazing applying that parenting technique to some of those kids, and watching them kind of come into their own and start to thrive, and it was really, really wonderful. So I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. And before I move on to like the even happier, where you kind of your life went, I just kind of tie up a loose end in the old life. Do you feel that you had any brokenness that had to heal? Because I mean, straight up, if I were you and my mom rejected my phone calls and didn't want to talk, I mean, there's a lot of people that would be broken by that. It would hurt. Did you recognize any of that? And then did you have a moment of healing or forgiveness, or that's just?
I had tons of brokenness, tons of frustration, feelings of self-doubt. And there was a moment of healing, and there was a moment of forgiveness, and honestly, it came sometime after I became a Christian. After I accepted Christ, it became clear to me that I was never going to be able to move beyond that point without forgiving her for what she did. And I genuinely have. And when I say forgive her for what she did, which is to abandon me, to give up any any involvement in my life. And I'm very glad that she did it in the way she did it. But especially when you're young, and again,
and with the family pressure she had on her, a non-supportive family.
Yeah. So yeah, I have moved past. I have forgiven her. There was a time that it really affected the way I viewed women. I was very distrustful and very, and again, that was something that after becoming a Christian, God helped sort out in my life thankfully, prior to me finding the woman that I would marry.
Yeah. Well, that is kind of what I was looking for, because there was. So I'm going to guess that that's part of why you were unruly towards your dad, because you hadn't yet had forgiveness in your heart. You may not have connected it directly, but you had abandonment issues until you recognized you had them.
That might be true, but then you think that at some point, now I think that there's a combination. It's probably just in my nature, because my kids, I love them to death. They have a very stable household, and they're just as hard to deal with as I was, if not more so.
Sorry, bad radio. Forgot to turn my phone off. It's off. Okay. So, Kevin, as your son was growing up, what, I mean, there was never a moment, obviously, that you just said that you ever regretted having this boy around. What would you say are the greatest things that you gained? And I mean, did you have any healing? Did you have any forgiveness that you had to work through because of the situation?
Yes and no, but probably not the way you're thinking. One, I thought I'd given up my dream to be a military aviator because I had him, and that was okay. And then a few years down the road, I got offered there was a different route to go, and I wound up having a fantastic career in the military, flying helicopters. And I was a crippled kid from Bush, Alaska, growing up, and I couldn't even. I took my first real steps at 9 years old because of a problem with my legs, or with one leg anyway. So I felt blessed to have him. I felt blessed that I got to have him, and eventually it just took a different route and a longer journey, but I got to fulfill my dream of being a military aviator. I got to have him in my life. The number of, so those were the cool things that I thought having him was worth it anyway. Not even, I mean, his entire life, having him was worth the changes that I had to go through to deal with the 2 jobs. And one of the things that I clung to was I will never put myself in a situation that I will say later, because of him, I didn't get to do that. Because of him, I didn't graduate high school. So I was working 2 jobs and going to high school, and I graduated high school. I went to college. I had to work my tail off, but I also went to college. I joined the military eventually, and he got to travel with me all over the world. I was just
going to say, I loved living in Europe, and that's a great gift.
We've had so many adventures. When I wasn't deployed, we never stayed home. Mm-hmm. We're always adventuring. The first, we're in this German orchard next to a beach not a German orchard, next to a beach of a lake. And we see these apples, and growing up in Alaska, you don't have apples on trees. You have them in the
salmon, right?
Right.
And snow.
So I walked out there and I spoke. What's that?
Salmon and snow and sleds.
Yeah, we get that. That's awesome. But we don't have apples growing on trees. And so Josh and I walked out into this orchard, and there was this German picking apples, and I spoke fluent German at the time. And I asked him I said, where we grew up in Alaska, we didn't have apples, and could I buy an apple so that my son could pick one off the tree? And he just started laughing, and he's like, I won't take your money, but go ahead. And there was this little bitty apple, and I told Josh to pick it because it was low enough for him to grab it. And the guy goes, 999. And he scoops my son, Josh, up, and he lifts him way in the air.
Aww.
Picks the biggest apple. It was so big, Josh couldn't get his mouth big enough to take the first bite of it. So all those adventures that we've had, and that's just one of a million. I've never looked back with regret about the decisions I had to make. Never, not once have I ever looked back with regret. And I do believe I was very successful in never finding myself in a situation where I said, if it wasn't for him. Matter of fact, the military said if I'd have signed an affidavit saying that he wasn't my son, I could continue my pursuit. And the first thing that popped in my head was,
why would I do that?
one day when Josh was older, well, we didn't have DNA tests back then. So, but one day when Josh was older and he found a document that I had signed saying he wasn't my son, it's just like, I can't do that, you know, and still God found a path for me to have a wonderful life with him, not despite him.
I'm going to ask you something that I wasn't even aware of, the bum leg, because what I'm hearing here is there's a fighter. So you weren't going to give up. So you've always had that fighting spirit, and working to get your ability to walk would seem like why you fought for the life of your child. Because scrappy little 17-year-olds don't usually win against a whole family of adults twice your age.
You know, it's a God thing.
Everything's a God thing.
I tell you what, I wasn't anything special.
No, but you're a fighter.
But the situations that I found myself in, and just knowing, I have no memory of ever not knowing God. I have no memory at all of not ever not knowing God. And like, he was there when I was little. He was there. I spent 3 months in a burn ward when I was a child in ICU and whatnot, and I never knew a time that he wasn't there. Just on and on and on. And so I credit him. And you know, you don't know you're on a path when you're moving forward until you look backwards and realize somebody has blazed that path for you. And that's what I liken it to. The fact that Josh has blessed my life tremendously. God has blessed my life amazingly. I have an amazing wife. I have amazing grandchildren. All my kids. But I don't feel like I don't get to take credit for that.
Well, good. I'm going to ask Josh who he credits. Josh, I know you have a love for the Lord, but I'm going to ask you first about your dad. What are describe your dad. What are his, I don't want to put you on the spot and say the 3 best adjectives, because if we're my husband, he'd be
bald.
like, what's an adjective? Who is this man that raised you?
3 adjectives. He is dedicated, driven, and completely ADD. The guy never stops moving. He is always working on some project or another. He's working with people. He has this gift of it's like in every field he's ever worked in every realm he finds himself in, there's someone that has a vision or has a dream or has a goal. They want to be able to build something that's never been built before, or to try something that's never been tried before, or just to build a company that's theirs. And Dad has this. He takes that on as if it's his own personal dream, and he works with them and does what he can to bring those dreams to life. In fact, he says often, he's like, I don't have any dreams of my own. I find people that do have them and help them fulfill them. So that's who he is. He's also, I guess he's also, he's an author and, like I said, and a pilot and a general contractor, and the guy just never stops moving. Yeah, that's who he is.
Top 2 memories with you and Dad.
When I was very young, we were out bird hunting, and the rule was, when you're out bird hunting, you get in a car, you're in a truck, and you're driving, and they say that the one who's this is an age-old family rule that the first person who spots a bird gets first shot at it, right? And so we're driving, and in Alaska, as you can imagine, hunting is kind of a big deal for the families up there.
Yeah.
So we're driving. Of course, the kids all have to sit in the back. Well, that radically reduces your possibility of seeing a bird. So what I would do is I'd look out the window, and you see the trees going by, and you just get the second flash, before the tree's gone. But every now and then, one of the birds will hear the car coming, and they'll fly up and land in a branch, and wait for the vehicle to pass, and they'll get back down on the road and start eating gravel or whatever. And so we're cruising by, and I saw this bird for just a fraction of a second. And I said, "Oh, there's a bird! There's a bird!" And so it's my dad and a couple of his brothers sitting in the front. We stop, and we're walking backwards, and he's going, "Okay, well, where do you see it? Where's this bird?" I said, "I don't know, it's back here somewhere." And I'm walking, and my uncles are starting to get impatient, and they go, "Okay, well, obviously he just wants some attention or something. He got bored back there." And Dad said, "No, if my son says he saw a bird, then there's going to be then we're gonna find that bird." We go back, and sure enough, there it was, sitting on a branch. And he says, "You earned it. You get first shot." And that was one of the proudest moments of my young, not even young adult. I mean, it was a kid at that point. And then I got to shoot it, and that was my bird, and it was because of the faith that he had in me. The other time, I had been deployed. Sorry, give me just 1 second. I had been deployed over in Iraq, and I came home, and I got married just before going over, so I spent some time with my wife, and then before I went back over, my brother was in the military youth academy in Alaska, and so I went down with my dad to see him. And I got to arm wrestle. I got to arm wrestle my brother. Now we were the first time we stood as two men, and he was such a big guy, and he was so strong, and it was the first time he ever beat me, and I was so proud of him. And Dad was there. He's just beaming with pride. Aside from the birth of my children and getting married, that is one of my favorite memories.
You and Jason with your dad?
Me and Jason and Dad together, as all three of us. And he was committed already and signed up to join the Marines. So his military career hadn't quite started yet. He had to finish that military youth program. But it was just a really spectacular memory. Yeah.
I got a picture of him of the boys arm wrestling.
Yeah. How old were you at that time?
Oh, who knows?
I mean,
a lot younger than I am now.
But I mean, Jason had to be 18, 19, 17?
Jason would have been 17 at the time. 17. He his first day in the Marine Corps was his 18th birthday. Yep. So Jason would have been 17, and Josh would have been 24, 23.
Wow. So he's 6 years older, and he gotcha.
No,
Josh won, but it wasn't.
Oh, I thought Jason won.
Okay, so you didn't ask me. You didn't ask me what Dad's detriments are, and it's that he never.
I was going to.
He never remembers stories exactly right. Jason did beat me.
He did or did not?
It was close. He did. Jason beat me. Yeah. No, he won, fair and square. Like I said, Dad just never remembers the details of the stories exactly right.
That's okay. For those of you that don't know, the hard part of this story is the deep love that these two gentlemen had for Jason, Kevin's second son, and Joshua's brother, who gave his life, and I'm already choked up again remembering that story, gave his life in Afghanistan for our nation. And I'm going to allow you, since you weren't on that show, Josh, just to honor your brother, because I see your love for him as well. 3 tight Karella men.
Thank you. he was an amazing Marine. He was an amazing man. And it was a very difficult moment, a very difficult time. But I'm so glad that we got the time that we did with him. And I mean, he could have been taken from us much sooner. And so, like I said, we are very grateful for the time that we had with him.
This is kind of a silly question, considering the nature of the conversation. Are you pro-life?
Yes. Yes, I am. In fact, from taking all of my personal story out of it, actually, no, I'm gonna retract that. I'm gonna have my personal story back into it. My childhood was not a fairy tale. I love my dad, and he was amazing. He was also in the military, and he traveled a lot. And my stepmom and I never really saw eye to eye. We had a myriad of problems, and so I had some difficult things in my life. There are times I talk to people, and they're like, I'm really glad that I'm really glad that you weren't aborted because you turned out to be such a great person, or whatever. And I think mostly they're just blowing smoke, just trying to make me feel better about what a good person I am. But the fact of the matter is, I don't see it that way. I don't see it's not good that I didn't get aborted because I happened to turn out to be a certain way. And by the way, that it wasn't like I was always a good person. I was a pretty rotten person. I was lost for a long time prior to becoming a Christian, and I was I did not fit any classical mold of what a decent or good person was or could be. And I guess for me, I'm glad that I wasn't aborted because I have a choice now. Because now I have a choice in the way that I'm going to live my life. I can either be a good person, or I can strive to be a good person, or I can strive to fulfill my own desires, or whatever it is. That I have the ability to choose how to live my life now, because my dad ultimately blocked my mom's car in so that she couldn't get on that flight, and that she decided to give up that pursuit and to give me a life that I now have a choice of. And now going to taking my personal story out of it, when a man and a woman, when they get pregnant, that is not either of them. The pregnancy, the baby has its own DNA. It is set. The things have set in motion to where that baby is going to wind up with its own personality, its own loves and fears and
Its own
ideas.
soul.
And that's ultimately what it boils down to, because all of those things combined, that is its own soul, exactly. And they say, well, yeah, but it's not really conscious yet. And I say, okay, but you're not conscious when you go to sleep. Does that mean that if you're asleep, that we can just end you? And the answer is always no, because eventually you're going to wake up. And the same thing is true. We exist in more than just a three-dimensional space. We also exist inside of time. And so if you do nothing, time will grow that baby into a full-grown human. And so when you go through and you make the decision to end the life of a baby because it's so young, it doesn't know anything, or that baby will grow into a human that is its own person. And that's what really bothers me about the my body, my choice statement, because it's not your body. It is a completely separate and independent body, a completely separate and independent soul that you're choosing to end. And having said that, I don't bear any ill will against women who have had an abortion. I don't want, I'm not looking to go punish anybody or anything like that, but I really do support efforts to take the choice,
Yes.
remove a woman's choice to remove the life of their baby, to take away every subsequent choice for that person.
Right.
And I probably could have worded it a little more eloquently, but that's how I.
No, but as a young 18-year-old who was pregnant and unmarried myself, just knowing it was legal actually made me call Planned Parenthood.
Mm.
And I even scheduled a date for my abortion because I was enlisted in the Marine Corps, delayed entry, and I knew that I wouldn't be able to go in. My whole career was shot. And I had a Holy Spirit moment where he stopped me and said, "You're going to keep the baby." I had an audible, actually. And I was pro-life, so I understand the terror. Terror. It was terror. What am I going to do of the unknown when your whole future and all your plans change? And so I too have no issue with women who are in the same position I was in, young girl, and I had a supportive family. So, but yes, if that choice wasn't legal, there's something about, oh, it's legal, so it must be okay. You know, like when slavery was legal, no one wants to hear that. Well, it was legal to have a slave at one point. Was it okay then? And now it's not. You know, it's silly. It's a silly thought. What would either of you, both of you, take your turn? I don't care who goes when. There's some young man right now who just found out his girlfriend's pregnant. And sadly, most girls are dropped off at the abortion clinics by the fathers who often, you know, don't stay in there with her and often don't stay with the girl afterwards. So I don't want to judge them either because my guess, they're just as scared as the girl is. What would you say to that young male who's got a girl pregnant right now and he thinks abortion's his only choice?
Be a man. Don't having a woman get an abortion, or asking a woman to get an abortion, or supporting a woman in getting an abortion. That is not that may be the easy way out, but it's not the right thing to do. It's never the right thing to do. And when you to be a man, that means to make difficult decisions. And there's a thing that's right. And then there's a thing that you want to do, the thing that's going to make your life easier. It's going to avoid the responsibility and the difficulty. But if that means ending the life of a person, of your son or daughter that you created,
Your flesh and blood.
that is your flesh and blood. That is not an option. Be a man, stand up, do the right thing.
Kevin?
I obviously I second everything that he just said. More to the point, in the current technology, Josh and I both support the Fort Worth Pregnancy Center, a Christian-based outfit, and I felt compelled to seek them out. I felt compelled that I needed to do something more. And I was reading about these 3D sonograms. And I'm looking at pictures that come from these sonograms of how spectacular they are. Anyway, so that's how I went to Fort Worth Pregnancy Center.
Because you're now in Texas. You're not in Alaska anymore.
Yeah, I'm in Texas right now. I fly for an airline, and so
okay, got it.
I never know. Somebody asked me where I live.
Are.
I'm like, I don't know. But so we got involved with this pregnancy center, and here in Texas, we have the heartbeat law now.
Oh, praise God.
One, they already had the 3D
ultrasounds.
The 3D ultrasound, but what they didn't have is people that could fix stuff like their fence or their door locks or whatever. So Josh and I have been able to provide services as part of our support in that regard. But right now, the pictures that sonogram is producing is changing more hearts and minds, more women than men, it sounds like currently. But now with that, I just got a call from them not long ago, and they said with the heartbeat law, they're busier than ever.
Excellent.
They've got more women and men looking for answers, looking for different answers, and how can they be successful in their life and take care of this child or give it up for an adoption to some couple that desperately wants a child. All of those things are good. And it's not just a black and white, have the baby or not have the baby.
Right.
You have the baby, and then if your life truly is in turmoil, adoption is not a bad thing.
No.
Adoption is not a bad thing. And when that young mother feels that kick for the first time, I kind of deal with that in my book with Olivia's Hope, and we don't need that'd be a different rabbit trail. But there's a young woman who she agreed to be a surrogate, and she thought it was just a business deal, and it was a in vitro until the moment she felt
the baby kick.
That baby kick, that child, that anyway, and it got. I think part of the events in my life really colored how that book came out. But back to Josh's point, guys, be a man. Step up. And there are lots of possibilities beyond giving up that baby. And even for me, I'm the one that kept the baby, and she went off, and that was okay. But as far as I'm concerned, far better than the alternative. Infinitely better than the alternative.
So that was. Oh, go ahead. I thought you finished.
Well, and so now we get the retrospective, right? We're already out here 39 years.
Gosh, you're old, Josh.
Took place.
Tell me about it.
And I get to look back at all these wonderful memories. And if I had to tell a young man something else that he doesn't know yet, I said, wait till you take him fishing for the first time.
Yes.
Wait till he plays Little League baseball. Wait till the first time he says dad or daddy. You will never regret your decision.
Well, I have one last question. That one was towards fathers, but it's actually not even a question. It's a statement. So name one thing you'd have our viewers do differently as a result of something they heard today.
Support your pregnancy centers.
You guys are like-minded, aren't you?
Yeah. Well, actually, I couldn't come up with any, and he said that. I said, yeah, I'll second that.
Support your pregnancy center. And here's the deal. Pregnancy centers not only need women there to counsel the young women, but they need godly men that are real, that are men that can counsel, can come alongside those young men and give them hope of a future. You know, Jeremiah 29:11, you know, it can't be said any better.
I knew you hope, before I knit you in my mother's womb. Is that the one that is?
No, it's I know the plans that I have for you, not to harm you, but to give you a hope in a future.
Prosper you, yeah.
It's depending on the version of the translation that you read, but still it's powerful, and you can give that to young men that are scared to death.
Yes.
And
men are craving for valor. Men, that's why there's so many military movies, so many blood and guts armies movies. It's a little bit distorted and actually even perverted in some ways, the way that they want to show the blood and guts. But that's what men are looking out to make a difference, to be chivalrous, to give their lives. Would you two military guys agree with that? I mean, you've got a son and a brother who's in heaven because he did just that. But both of you were military as well. Would you speak that true for even gentlemen who don't join the military?
Absolutely. Yeah. And you know, if you're hearing what Dad's saying, and you think, well, I'm no good as a counselor. You know, right now, they don't need any male volunteers there to do things like counseling at this particular crisis.
Yeah.
But what they did need is they when Dad gave him his number and said, if you guys need anything, and they called and they said, our fence needs a little bit of repair. And so you know, repairing a fence is not really, you know, that's not a glorious thing to do, but okay, we'll do it. So we showed up, and then turned out it wasn't just a fence. It was the fence around their dumpster. And so there's this little dumpster fence, and so we got that doctored up to where the door, opened.
Well, you and the grandkids did.
And I did.
You made a family event out of it.
The whole family. And they said, "Hey, would you mind painting it? Because the paint looks horrible." We said, "Yeah, sure." And so they gave us. They said what kind of paint. We got the paint. We painted it up, and then they had a couple doors that need fixed. They weren't locking properly or whatever. And those are not glorious things, but it prevents them from taking time away from the work that they're doing to fix a fence. If we can go paint that fence, and we can go we can get the doors working right and shimmed and things like that, then they don't have to take any time away from the overwhelming number of people that need their help. And that is and that's what. So you don't have to be super well spoken. You could be like me and show up with a can of WD-40, some duct tape, and a paintbrush,
and a will to help.
And a will to help, exactly.
I lied. I really do have one more question. Your kids know your story?
They do.
What are their thoughts? Because they wouldn't be here.
I don't know that they've really thought about it that deeply. I know that I want them to I want to tell them that story, so that when they hear, when they go to school and their their teachers start talking about things, the pro-abortion, or quote unquote pro-choice movement, that they can say, that they have that story to relay to their teachers and friends at school. That I don't know. I think I'm going to wait a few years and find out what their adult opinions are of that scenario. I am interested. To
have them watch this show.
Yeah, but at this point in time, they're fairly young, and I think anything I ask them right now, they just kind of parrot back my own feelings on the subject, which is fine. But someday they'll have clear heads and clear thoughts about how they feel about it.
God bless you both. Fill in the blank, and this is the last thing I'm going to kind of. It's technically not a question, so I didn't lie. Fill in the blank. When I die, I will know I have made a difference if
God tells me, "Well done, good and faithful servant." That is the ultimate goal of my life.
And Josh stole mine. The idea, a very, very old, amazing, godly friend of mine named Roger McPeak. Josh and I were both actually part of Promise Keepers. And Roger told me one day, he owned a grocery store. And he said, one day I was stocking shelves, and I heard this blood-curdling, high-pitched scream, and I looked down the aisle, and there's my granddaughter, 3 years old, and running as fast as she could to leap into my arms. Oh. He said, you can't imagine that kind of joy. He goes, I hope that's what the joy my Father has when I come to heaven. And he says,
welcome home.
And then the first time I was in Home Depot, just grabbing something off the shelf, and I hear this scream, and I look down the aisle, and there is one of my granddaughters running at me as fast as she could and leapt in my arms. I'm like, okay, God, I knew it intellectually. Now I know it physically.
There's
amazing.
Nothing like it. Gentlemen, you have been such a gift to me and to my viewers, and I can't thank you enough. Kevin, you have lived quite the life, and I thank you first for honoring Jason's life and then letting me know about this little troublemaker you got here, Josh.
Big troublemaker.
Big troublemaker, but what a blessing. You are, first and foremost, the men that you raised, and Josh, thank you for being such a godly man. And both of you for showing the world that men are not weak and effeminate, and men can have strength and compassion all at the same time. That's something that there's a lot of people out there trying to lie or misconstrue, and if they're not trying to lie, they just don't understand. So I thank you for being manly men, for being loving men, for being godly men, and for not being afraid of sharing your story. To me, that takes all the bravery in the world. And anything else, but all of you watching, I want to thank you for watching. This is a tough subject.
Can
Yes,
I add
please.
one more thing? My dad was a World War II Marine, and when we would talk about fear, he goes, everybody has fear. If they say they're not afraid of something, they're lying. He goes, but a man steps up despite his fear and does what's right anyway.
Yeah.
And I think that embodies my son and my grandkids as well.
Amen. Amen.
Even in spite of the fear, you step up and you do what's right. You do what's necessary anyway.
I heard the definition of courage is like seeing the fear, and walking into it. So, so I guess that's it. Any last words for you, Josh, before I send off to our viewers?
Yeah, one last thing. If you're interested, there is an incredible book. It's called Olivia's Hope by Kevin Karella. Olivia's Hope is it is.
Do you have a copy right there?
It is an amazing. I don't, because I'm in. There you go.
Okay, there you go. I was saying mine is right around here, and I should have had it.
Olivia's Hope by Kevin Karella. It's an amazing book, and aside from that, thank you very much for your time. God bless you, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Same to your audience.
Thank you. Well, all of you watching, I don't think there's much more I need to say. I want to say if you're in that position, all three of us, to different degrees, have had to deal with this issue. And as a young woman who is in that place, saying, please choose life. Please choose life. And if you're scared and you don't know who to trust, then maybe you trust me just by watching me. Go ahead and go to my website, breakfastwithbacon.com, and you can talk to me directly. And I will do everything in my power to support you, to help you find hope as well, and to turn you in a direction that you, like these two gentlemen, can say, I'm glad I did it. And if you're a young man watching, you know that you are capable, you are strong, you are courageous despite what is around you, whatever people say. Don't listen to the voices. You've got what it takes. You can go to my website, Breakfast with Bacon, and if you know someone who's in this position and you don't know how to share this conversation, share this conversation. Share this show. Go to my website, breakfastwithbacon.com. I've said it enough. It's easy to remember. There's plenty of shows, and I've got many shows on pro-life. Find the one that you think your friend, your family member will best connect with, and let's go ahead and save a life, save a soul together. I think that's about it, right? Oh, don't forget to like and share this and all my other shows on social media. That's good, right? Gentlemen, do you remember how I go off the air? If you forget, it'll come to you in a moment. But anyway, all the rest of you, Mr. and Mr. Karella, I want to thank you guys for being on my show. For all of you viewers, I want to thank you for watching. I am Dr. Christine Bacon. You've been watching Breakfast with Bacon, and I want to remind you always to live your life. You remember, guys?
Sunny side up.